Hello, everyone. I am here with Erin, the fifth placer and the seventh member of the jury.
You're doing great.
How are you doing today, Erin?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Sean?
Well, okay, so we're gonna talk about your entire game. First things first, you start off this game playing as like basically a lone wolf. You started the game with a lone wolf style, and once you connected with people that you wanted to work with, you decided to play this, I guess, strategy of I'm winning for you to go far. Like I'm doing this for you to go far. So, and you made it all the way to the top five. Were you shocked that you made it this far with that kind of strategy?
Absolutely. I kind of imagined I didn't mean to piss people off with that strategy because I kind of had an idea that some people would take this game as people should. This is like a hobby. This is their super fans. They want to play it as if they're really on Survivor. But I think I kind of hoped it would make me a bigger target to lessen that of my friends. And I was surprised that it almost, I think, in a way, diminished my target because people saw me as not doing anything or not a threat until later on in the game. So the fact that I made it that far when I really was just going hard and not managing my threat level for the sake of my friends, I thought it made me a threat, and no one took an opportunity until late game, until Liam did it himself, basically.
So, I believe you got a total of 3 votes this entire season, and I believe it's 3 votes. You got one from the first vote with the Zach,
Oh yeah.
and then Liam's vote, and I'm pretty sure you had one more vote cast against you. Oh, self vote. You had a self vote.
Yeah.
Um, so again, were you shocked to manage that you only had the entire season technicalities 2 votes minus the self vote?
Yeah, honestly, like if I know this is like my exit interview, but if you have some insight on that, because it's kind of hard to think of how other players perceived me, like how that even happened, you know? I guess because I just made the right connections and was non-threatening because I really just genuinely wanted to get to know people. I don't know. I don't know how that happened.
All right. So okay, so you started off this game in OG Carvow, and you landed in a pretty secure spot. You found yourself in a 3-person alliance called the I Love Money Peeps, or in this case, ILM Peeps. Um, and then you swapped into a majority OG Carval tribe, and then now you're made it to emerge where basically the people you were working with was the majority. So were you expecting to be in the majority or being able to be part of like the majority that ran most of the entire game? Or were you expecting to like be in the middle, be voted out, be not like what was like your overall thoughts on that?
Well, in the I Love Money game that I played and I ended up winning, I was in horrible spots all the time. And I'm not against being in a bad spot in a game or being in the minority. In fact, I think it's really fun trying to play your Dan Giesling life of like playing your Dan Giesling funeral or whatever. I think it's actually really fun if you are. I feel as though what was my error in that game was I didn't reach out to everyone and got to know them on a personal level. Also, it was just a missed opportunity because it's also genuinely cool to get to know everyone. So this game, I went in and I messaged everyone like right away that I could. And I think it didn't become surprising because I had already done what I feel like a lot of players don't do, which is just connect to people, like, or make an attempt to, because I think I appreciate that if someone just even makes the effort. So it didn't surprise me in the very least of knowing where people's heads are at, even if they weren't direct to me, I could still read it if I got on a call with them and talk some game, because I just already opened that avenue where it sounded genuine too, because I was reaching out to them before we were ever in danger. So it's not like if I hopped on a call with them when we had a vote, would it seem insincere by any means, because I had already had calls with everyone. So I was in a good spot socially where I could genuinely talk to everyone even if they weren't on my side. I pretty much talked to everyone except for Lucy when it came down to merge, but that's later on because I wanted to just have one clear target, but then she kept winning immunity. So then I had to target people that I did talk to, which were people she was closer with, who I was able to figure out because I was so close with everyone. So when it came down to majority or minority, I mean, there are still other factors that didn't necessarily, it me being in the majority didn't just fall into place for me. I had to read the rooms and kind of figure that out, especially when it came down to finding out later on that, Jess has in real life personal connections with like Joe and Matt, and they were on a tribe. She could have easily flipped on at the time Josh and I, but it's because of our pre-existing, connections that we made with her that surpassed in real life connections. Same with when it came down to merge with that 6-person alliance who were going to vote out David and then Josh and then back to David. I was not in the majority. It was with the connections of us coming together and playing that right that turned into the majority, where I think Josh and I were talking about voting out Chantel that day, like blindsiding her. So we didn't even intend to work with OG Carval when it came to merge. It just so happened that circumstances led us to maneuver as quickly as possible because we weren't in the majority and we had to do what we could with a bad situation. And so, yeah, I like being in bad situations. And maybe from the outside perception of things, it might look like, oh, it was an easy ride, but it really wasn't. We had to kind of always maneuver for what we had.
Okay, so let's talk about in production's eyes the hardest, I guess, vote you and your tribe went to was the Matt vote. The first ever, I guess, swap pit you guys went to. Tell us your moment in that moment. Tell us your feelings in that moment, like, because I can tell you really got along with every single person in your swap tribe. And when you guys lost by 19 seconds and found out you guys were going to the pit, it was like, what are we gonna do? We've connected through and through, you know, and you guys bonded over the music video. You guys really connected while making that music video together. Was it hard voting out Matt, and was it hard actually picking and choosing who to actually be beneficial moving forward?
Yeah, so a little behind the scenes is I was moving out from my apartment during that time and then moving into my dad's place and then having to renovate my dad's place. So I was pretty exhausted that whole weekend already. And then I stayed up late to go over an hour after the second person dropped. Jess had dropped, and I really didn't want to go to the pit. So I stayed an extra hour just to make sure no one would go home, because I did mean it when I said I really don't want to vote out people that I genuinely really like. When it got down to merge, I wanted Josh to go further. So it's kind of like, who are you going to vote for? I'll vote with you. So it's easier because it didn't feel as more personal, I guess. Whereas when I wasn't even at merge, I was like, who am I really helping here? So when I got to that point, it was really hard. And I was devastated when we lost by that 19 crucial seconds. And I remember I messaged Prod and I said, can I give up my immunity? I almost was going to give it up to Matt or Joe or whoever promised that they would have voted me out and then have them vote me out, because I wanted them to keep playing. But I guess it happened for a reason, because I was able to get to merge and now I'm in the jury, able to do my goal, which is helping the people I want to help, I guess, in the end, which may or may not be a jury vote, depending on if they still play their best game. I'm still going to keep an open mind, but that was, I think, yeah, personally for me, that was the hardest, because I didn't have that fight in me, like that end goal to smell. and I felt it on me because I was the one that didn't last 19 more seconds.
So let's talk about something you touched upon earlier. Chantel's vote out. Days prior, you and Josh were on call talking about like, do we make a move on Chantel? You and Josh actually compared notes when you guys swapped together about the idols, and from there, like you had suspicions on who had it, and like there was no idol once you sent in the correct number. Um, when Kevin ended up using his idol and Chantel left, was that like a shock? Because you and Josh did talk about blindsiding Chantel. Um, were you shocked that Chantel's the one who got voted out? Were you upset that you weren't part of the vote? Like, what was going on in your mind in that moment?
It was a mix of all of those things because it was something that Josh and I talked about. Also, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, like when I got into jury chat, when people are talking about their game later on, can I like say that too? Everyone was talking about how the reason that Josh and I were pushed to not do that Chantel blindside was because Brian had come to us and was like, they're throwing out your name, Josh. We need to make an alliance with everyone that wasn't included in that 6 people that were going to vote you. So then we were like, okay, screw that. We have to keep Chantel close. She's going to be a number for us. She was going to be loyal for us, but she is just a good game player. So we were just like, maybe it's just a threat now to get her out because it makes sense. If I had a huge suspicion that Chantel knew that Josh and I had worked close together in a game before. She just wasn't saying it. So that's just going to be a threat later on. So, I don't think Josh trusted her at all. They didn't really talk game. So, but we were forced to throw that out of the way when we were like, well, we have to gang up with Chantel. The thing that makes me really confused is that apparently Brian was the one that threw out Josh's name to Lucy and co. So why did he do that? I still don't know. I'm curious to find out. But if he hadn't done that, then I think it would have been a very different game. At first, I just thought maybe it was just Lucy and co throwing out Josh's name. But if Brian's the one that did it, then Brian forced our hand to do something that might have not even benefited his game that much. In fact, it didn't because Brian didn't know what was going on in that boat. We didn't know what was going on in the boat. We almost did what they were going to do. And it did drive a wedge between Josh and I with Jess and Joe because Kevin had proved I had a really good close connection with Kevin, but he just wasn't being as honest with me as he was Jess and Joe, or mostly Jess. So I couldn't trust Kevin, and that even led further down to us not wanting to work with Jess and Joe anymore because they were so they were advocating so hard for Kevin to be a 5th number for us, when in reality, at the time, it made more sense for us to include Brian, because if Kevin was trusting them and not us, then 3 people versus 2. Versus if Brian was with us and trusted us more than Jess and Joe, then it would have been our 3 versus them 2. But we didn't want to go head to head against Joe. So I think that's what ultimately led to Joe going home too. But yeah, it was a cool play to see in person. I love a good idol play done correctly. But it was again a bad situation that we took, and we tried to see the best scenario for us, and the best scenario was we don't have to get Chantel out ourselves. So good jury management when it comes down to Josh later down the line, I guess.
Okay, so let's talk about your exact feelings as a whole. Did you regret anything in the game? Did you feel like you could have done something better? If so, what is it?
I definitely kind of regret pushing so hard that I didn't want to win, because when it came down, I felt like I couldn't really say I wanted to win anymore, because I was like, well, that would just feel so disingenuous. So I really just have to give this up now. But when it got close and I was kind of smelling it, I kind of wanted to keep playing and play for the win, but I just kept pushing it so hard that it wouldn't have felt right for any of the other players that I'd already set up. And I think also Lucy brought something up in the jury chat. She was like, whenever I was asked a question, I was like, oh, I'm having so much fun, because I was. Mind you, I don't care if I'm in bad situations. And I think the outward perception that everything was going swimmingly when it maybe not always was. Of course, like there were other players who were not set up as well, but whatever. Lucy had told me that because I was saying I was having so much fun, but I wasn't like up for elimination, that I was kind of insensitive, and I didn't realize that, and I kind of feel bad about it now because I really didn't think about it. But I did say sorry, and she was like, "Oh no, it's fine, like whatever." But I think I do regret maybe going a little too chill with things. But other than that, like I still really had a great time. Like this is, I mean, I haven't played a ton of orgs, but this has been like a great one. Like props to you, props to Topher, props to Jen. Like this is a great org. Great job.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Let's actually talk about the deal with the devil and you getting voted out. So production had this perception that you were gonna just straight up be like, when that power advantage was played, you're gonna be like, oh, Lee, I've been preaching this entire game that I don't want to win. You know, you can vote me out. So we were expecting you to unmute and be like, you can vote me out here. It's okay. But you stayed on mute and eventually Lee made the decision to vote you out. Do you think it was beneficial for Lee's game to do that, to take you out instead of either Josh, Jess, or Brian? Or was it the right move for Lee?
I think so, because I would have done whatever to keep Josh in further. And I guess at this, like, I feel like if I were there, Lee would have just gone home, like tonight. Like if it was me, Brian, and Josh, and say he sent Jess home, it would have been 3-1. And, or yeah, it would have been like 3-1, I guess. And Lee would have gone home next. And then Josh would have been so sitting pretty. So I think he knew that Brian and I and Josh were close. I don't know if he even thought I voted for him, because also, well, one of the first questions Lee asked is, so who voted for me? And I didn't, but I wasn't gonna say Jess because I didn't want to like take her down. Like I figured I was going home. So I was like, okay. Also, like if someone's gonna use a power where they have to decide one person and they've had that power, you're not going in it without an idea of who you're gonna vote for. So I was like, okay, it's already said and done. Like I'm just gonna sit here and like see this go down, I guess. But I definitely think it was the best game move for him, especially because I feel like him and Jess were close, so it made it more even. But yeah, I guess I didn't fully preach to the choir, like send me home, send me home, send me home, because I don't know, I guess I wanted to not make it easier for him. I kind of wanted to see him squirm a bit when he was saying his speech, I guess. So maybe that's just like the sick in me. But I thought it was still fun. I think it was a good move for him. Maybe, honestly, probably should have sent Josh home. Like if I'm being like really biased, like unbiased, I mean, because with Brian and Josh and me, like we're all working with Josh. So I don't know. And then Jess is also a huge 3 threat. Honestly, it would be really dumb to get out Brian. Like Brian didn't even need to fight his case. Like he is the GOAT of the season. So it was really just between those 3. And I guess, okay, sorry for like rambling, but I guess my whole plan of making myself the target the whole game worked, because I don't think if I weren't there, then maybe Josh would have went home and then all my work would have been for nothing. So maybe I achieved my goal that night, you know?
Was it that's why that leads me to my next question actually? Was it that's why you, instead of fighting for your life within those 2 minutes, you instead made your, goodbyes, and everything, your exit speech at that moment? Was it that's why?
Yeah, definitely. It was like, okay, it's not Josh. I like Jess too. Brian's a GOAT. Peace and love. Like I'm I've I've ended my chapter of what I wanted to achieve. So, you know.
Okay, so this goes into, let's talk about the next thing we're going to talk about is you as a juror. So you've never actually been in a jury. First
Never.
game you ended up winning. Second game you played pre-merge. Um, even though that hasn't been really published.
Yeah.
So this is your first time in the jury. What are you
Mhm.
expecting as a juror? What are you looking into a finalist
Hmm.
to vote for?
I think something that I like is when you look at the season as a whole and kind of like the vibes, the energies, like you can go ahead and say what, you know, it's like when you look at the big cast of Big Brother, you can look at like the most deserving winners or whatever, but usually the winner is like who really represents that season. And there's definitely more strategists, there's more comp beasts, there's more misters or whatever. But if that season wasn't about misting, if that season wasn't about like competing your heart out, if that season wasn't about being the most strategical person there, then it doesn't make sense. So I feel like I really have to reflect on what the inaugural season of Inferno really encapsulates, and I want my winner to represent that. So yeah.
Lastly, why did I brain fart there? Um, lastly, for any future Inferno or Infernet or anyone Inferno in between, um, who would apply for Inferno, what is a tip or advice you would definitely give them when it comes to casting and applying?
Oh my gosh, like this is a great prod team. They're very friendly, so don't be afraid to be your genuine self. Make yourself out there. Don't be afraid to let your personality shine and have fun with it. It's a fun season. And yeah, play hard. It's a good game. It's well organized, and Prod will help you and talk to you. If not help you like win the game, but like they'll talk to you. So yeah, I would say just have fun with it, and it's a good group of people, well managed, and you're gonna have a good time if you apply.
Much appreciated. So, with that being said, everyone, this is Erin, our fifth placer, seventh place. Fifth placer, seventh person of our jury. Thank you again, Erin, for playing. You already know how I feel. You already know how production feels. Um, you'll still be a queen. And yeah, I'll stop the recording.